Welcome to the special edition podcast where we'll be diving into the ins and outs of extended enterprise learning. I'm joined by industry experts Fiona Leteney, Senior Analyst at Fosway Group, Europe's #1 HR industry analyst, and Stephan Pineau, CEO at Training Orchestra, leading global provider of training management system software. So in this episode, we're going to explore the rapidly accelerating landscape of extended enterprise training, industry trends, including when it comes to instructor-led and virtual instructor-led training, and the technology behind it all, and future considerations that are reshaping the discipline. So let's dive in. Hi, Fiona. Hi, Stephan. Thank you for being here today.
Hi, Jennifer. Yeah, it's great to be here and to talk to you as well, Stephan.
Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure, Fiona.
All right, great. So let's go and get started. So Fiona, we're seeing that the situation today with extended enterprise learning, it's really accelerating. So to start us off today, what is extended enterprise learning and why has it gained such significant traction with organizations around the world?
Yeah, a great question. And the thing is, extended enterprise as a term is used by us as analysts and also the vendors. Because it covers a lot. And so if we were explaining every time what we were talking about, then it would take too long. So we just call it extended enterprise. But what we mean by that is anything that is outside the company's payroll. So the stakeholders, the people outside the company payroll, but are significant to that company. So it obviously is the customer. And it could be the partners that are selling to those customers, but it could be a franchise setup, or it could be training organizations, and even contractors who maybe become part of the payroll, but sometimes those are kind of, are they internal, are they external, and so those can be considered as well. So yeah, that's what we're talking about in extended enterprise. And yes, you're right, it's absolutely accelerating, and we've been seeing this for quite a number of years, but it really took off more because of COVID. And the reason for that is, well, obviously training your customers has had to happen forever. I mean, it's important, but it has had to go online because of COVID. So we were starting to see in the learning technology industry that more companies were either expanding their products, the use of those products, or buying them new. So that's why we've seen an acceleration in this area. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it sounds like some pretty big growth then. That's yeah, and so and because of that, then how is extended enterprise learning contributing to the growth and the success of organizations, and really why does it matter to businesses today?
Yeah, well, as I was just alluding to, the success of an organization, it's important that your customers are successful, and so you need to be able to train them, and so it's hugely important. The training it can be almost considered as another product. Sometimes it's there as a benefit, but sometimes you're also selling that as well. But of course, keeping your customers happy is the most important thing, and so that's where the training really comes in. And I think, as you mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the trainer use case. There are lots of others, and if those that are listening, we cover all those areas, but I think the main focus of this is about the trainer use case, the instructor-led, the virtually instructor-led. And so that's why I'm talking to Training Orchestra on this, because you've been doing this forever. This is your role to the training resource management is what you do. So Stephan, why don't you tell us a little bit about Training Orchestra and the use cases that you have and the companies that you're talking to and seeing?
Yes, absolutely, with pleasure, and thank you for this introduction, Fiona. I think it's the clearest definition I've never heard. All the learners that are outside of payroll. That's so simple, that it's so clear, that it's now evident. That thank you so much for this definition. And as you said, Training Orchestra is a training management system. And so we complement usually the other learning management system, the other learning system. So most of our clients, they will have one of the best LMS, but still they manage instructor-led training and veteran instructor-led training with Excel spreadsheet and Outlook. So we complement and do not overlap with our friends, the learning management system. And we can serve, obviously, the employee education business model, but we can also very well serve customer education, partner education, all the external audience, not on the payroll use cases. So it's all about, I think, scheduling the classes, managing the availability of the trainers, tracking the cost, and managing training as a business, because it could be a business, a not-for-profit or a for-profit business. We'll come back on that. And we're seeing globally the importance of the training of the entire ecosystem, not just one portion. The success of an organization today is not just because their employees are properly trained. That's great, but it's not enough. You need your distribution network, if you're a car manufacturer, to be properly trained, because you need them to sell car, and they are not owned by the car manufacturer. You need your product to be properly used, mostly in high consequence industry. When you think about medical scanner, or you think about the Boeing, the Airbus, if their product are not properly used, they will endanger all lives.
Yeah.
So that's critical, that's strategic. So obviously, client education, partner education is key for success. You were also mentioning the franchisee, or really simply the contractors. I think that for having a successful company, the skills must be high in the entire environment, not just the employees. A lot of focus has been, put on the employee training, but partner and client training is also at core.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Stephan. Thank you, Fiona. So I'd like to dive into a little bit more about the learning technology that's supporting all of this, and really, how is it taking things from employee training to a profit center, and are our learning tech stacks prepared for this type of scenario? So Fiona, from an analyst perspective, where is the market in terms of delivering extended enterprise training and making it a profit center?
That's two questions. So let's talk about the market itself and the technology, and then we'll come to the profit center in a minute. But from the technology perspective, what I've been seeing is that because extended enterprise has become so important in the market out there, that a lot of the vendors who have been doing internal training have now realized that there is a need for that external training as well. Although there are some that have been there forever, because there have already been for many, many years the need to be selling, it could be product training or whatever, to do that online. So, but we've seen that expand. I can also see that there is quite a difference in sophistication in those vendors, those vendor products. Now, if those of you that know Fosway will know that we have a benchmark tool, the 9-grid, and the Learning Systems 9-grid is the one that I'm responsible for. And there are almost 50 products on there, vendors on there. They're either as squares or they're as circles. Now, if they're squares, that means they're specialists. If they're circles, that means they're suites. But unfortunately, there is no other way. There's no way of knowing which one of those can do extended enterprise and whether they can do it well. So there's one on there that is a specialist, and it is explained in the report that they're a specialist in extended enterprise. In other words, all they do is the external. But the suites, more and more of them are starting to pick up on being able to deliver both internal and external training, but they, as I say, they do it to a greater or lesser extent. Some of them have been experienced in this for a long time, and they're probably their clientele is 50-50, whether that's internal or external. Internal, I'm talking about the L&D space, often under HR, but this is something that's quite difficult for the buyers. Now, if we were on a webinar, I could ask you, where do you come from? Are you L&D or are you external? But we're a podcast, and so I can't ask that question. But there are probably those of you out there that are not part of the L&D department. So where are you? And it could be you're in the IT department, you're in operations, you're in marketing, you're in sales. There's a whole load of buyers looking for technology, and the vendors are attempting to get to you, and that can be difficult. It's easy for the internal. We go for the learning department, but for the external, that's quite difficult. And so that's where the technology is going, profit center now. So to come back to your question, Jennifer, so quite a number of organizations have already been set up as a profit center. And I think a lot of those that are delivering the training with trainers then probably set up to sell that training alongside the product and set up as a profit center. But there are others that isn't the case. But there's quite a few that are wanting to go there, and they're not yet sophisticated or mature enough to do that, either as a part of the organization, or they don't have the technology, the capability to do it yet. So, but I think it's the direction of travel. There are a lot more wanting to be profit centers, and there are those that have been profit centers for quite some time.
Great, thank you, Fiona.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephan. You alluded earlier to a tech stack that is specifically built for the needs of extended enterprise learning, and that technology is different. So for one or the other, and again, we're talking that internal audience versus external audience. So can you tell us more about that?
Yes, sure. That's a great question. So first of all, we can see very diverse situation. If you compare, the training offered by the United Nations in some countries, and they are doing it for free. It's not for profit. It's going to be very different than a training organization with an entrepreneur. He has founded his company, and he clearly have a for-profit mission. So I think that one criteria, one subject that is extremely important is that is it for profit or not for profit. Second, when you're talking about Boeing or Airbus, and they will train United Airlines, American Airlines, Air France, KLM, British Airways, they are not going to mix all their population. Why? Because the configuration of the aircraft is maybe not the same, maybe because some of those companies compete against each other, so they will organize private session, and that's a very big driver. The session is private, it's for one airline only, and we're not going to mix the population. But if you're a training business and you're training on how to use Excel spreadsheet, for beginners, you may mix someone from American Airlines with Citibank and whatever, it's not a problem. So it's called open session or public session. So that's a very big driver. Those use cases exist very frequently. So it should be a driver when you choose, obviously, your technology. And obviously, if you're a software company selling finance system, you will be more in a B2B business model. But if you're the Red Cross and you have to train the entire population about, how you can react if you see someone who's in trouble, and it's going to be really B2C. So are you more in a B2B business model with ordering process and the way you manage the process will be completely different than a Red Cross that in a B2C business model. So I think it's three different drivers. With these three examples, we see that the consequence and the structure of the learning stack may be different. So I would say first that extended enterprise requires a specific tech stack because you're managing not anymore employee education, but client education, partner education, franchisee education. Some, as Fiona was saying, but she knows more than me, some learning management system will be very strong on the extended enterprise use case, while some other will be very strong on employee education. But, not everyone is at the same maturity level, but it may be different. So the positioning, and the experience and expertise may be different between the vendor. Second, I would say that extended enterprise requires specific connectivity. If we're talking about the clients, we need to connect with the CRM. If we're talking about a for-profit or a not-for-profit business model, you need a website, Your offer has to be publicly available or privately available just to your partner. So it may be a private, and we're not just talking about the learner, we're talking about the clients, the partners, and so it may be visible, the offer that you have may be, visible differently if you sell a product in Portugal, if you sell a product in UK, it's different currency, or if you sell to a B2B, in a B2B or B2C business model, are you selling more private classes, public classes? And also you need to connect with a finance system for the invoicing, for the profitability. So connectivity is different. We're not talking about the traditional connection with an HRIS to obtain the list of the employees. Another point is that extended enterprise requires specific feature. Obviously, we discussed about as we're talking about training today more than e-learning, it's important to have the capabilities like scheduling the classes, assigning the resource, managing the cost, managing the availability of the trainer, managing all the tasks, because you have a lot of complexity. But on the top of those features that you can have on both sides, when you do employee education or client education, you need specific feature for the extended enterprise. It's the ordering process. What's my price list? And I'm selling 1,000 euro, the same course to Portugal, and I don't know, 950 euro to France, and $1,200 to US, and 1,000 pounds to UK, the same exact virtual classroom with different pricing. So ordering process, depending of the product that you sell, depending of the process. Invoicing process should be really specific. When do you need to invoice? At the order? When you sell the seats in the public classes, or it's 50% at the beginning because you sell a private classes, and 50% when it has happened. Also, the way you collaborate with the client can be very different. Is it a B2B relationship or a B2C relationship? And you need to manage the profitability, because it was in your question and in Fiona's answer, for profit or not for profit, you give it for free or not. But you need to know how profitable it is if it's a for-profit business model. And that's a specific feature that you will need. So obviously, at Training Orchestra, from the day one we started, I don't know if I told you that, it was a long time ago, I was very young, Fiona, but we started with a marketplace. It has been our first product. And the marketplace was, we serve L&D and we serve a training business, and they can collaborate all together. So the day one, the first second, we had the training business, the training company, the extended enterprise business model, and the L&D employee education. We had one from the first day. So obviously it was more easy to have one system, but I think that what the COVID has changed is that we're seeing now clients willing to have one system to serve all the training operation, and not having one system for employee education and one system for client or partner education.
Yeah, I am seeing that they do separate, and it depends whether there is that internal conversation that goes on. And I think that's an interesting point. I know I was at an event some time ago where we were talking about extended enterprise, and at one point I kind of asked whoever was speaking was saying, have you spoken to your L&D department? And they said, Oh, yes, actually, last week we did have a conversation. And so sometimes, I would say to anybody that's listening, if you are L&D, go looking for those that are trying to sell out to their customers. They're trying to train your customers. But also, if you are in that sales department and you are selling products, just check in with the L&D departments, because I think the cross-fertilization, the sharing of expertise, doing things well, as Stephan's already explained and shown, I think that there are different things that you need to focus on when you're selling to your customers, and the issues that there are with currency, with discount codes, there's a whole different set of features there. But there's also, I think there are some that are just maybe starting off. I was actually talking just very recently to another vendor who actually was selling to a hair care product organization. Now they were selling to salons and individual businesses, salons, small. There might only be a few owners, and they might only have a credit card. They might not want to be invoiced. So there might be some that need that instant credit card payment gateway, but there are others that is just a larger company. You would never use a credit card to actually buy the content. But one of the things that I think, because we were talking about different features, I think one of the things that we can see that differentiates whether somebody can sell as only an internal learning system or whether they can cope with external, it's about whether they can keep those external customers separate or not. And there's different ways of doing it. Some are doing it in groups and audiences, but some are doing it in domains, and they're very secure, and they're being able to cross over as a mistake. You can't kind of do that at all, and you want to keep them separate. And keeping them separate, you might want to brand them differently. So if you are selling products to one big organization, and to take some of your if you're selling to KLM and British Airways, you might want to keep that branding separate so that they are very different. And also it might be that your administrators, do you want their administrators to be able to add content, or do you want the content just coming from you? I'm thinking about, for example, car manufacturers, where it's very clear how you maintain their particular cars, and therefore the learners or the administrators of those learners will not be able to change any of that. That will be just delivered. But they might need to be able to add new learners on if there's somebody else arrived into the dealership that needs to be able to have access, and the original manufacturer doesn't want to have to deal with all that sort of thing. So it's that kind of access and that kind of functionality that I think is important, alongside all the currency, the taxation policies, and all that kind of thing as well, that is important. So yeah, it's a different product, but a lot of vendors are attempting to do both to a greater or lesser extent. That's what we're seeing anyway as analysts.
So that's great. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. We talked about the tech stack and connectivity, different features, but expanding on features a little bit, Stephan, I'm wondering, are there essential features or capabilities or even questions that you need to be asking, you should be asking your learning system vendors about, to differentiate the tech that's needed for extended enterprise training?
Yes, that's I think that some important question that may be asked. The first one is the ability, I think, for the learning system to manage the private classes. Usually it's what 50% of the training business, so we cannot forget 50% of the business. So the first question would be, how do you manage those private classes, and how do you manage unknown learner? Some learners are not known. Obviously, how do you differentiate partner education versus employee education, franchisee education, or client education? Another question is, how do you manage a for-profit training organization, if you're for-profit or not for-profit? What's so specific that you offer to manage, for example, a for and not for-profit? And how do you connect to the CRM? And what's the experience that we have with that, with the website, with the e-commerce capability, with the marketing automation system? That's very important question, Jennifer.
And I think that it's also, knowing your own business, obviously, and what you are going to be needing, because a lot of what we've mentioned might not be relevant for you, but there are certain things, and it's those very specific use cases you need to be able to describe to those vendors, so that they can say, not just, yes, we tick that box, but they can show you that they can do that, that they are able to demonstrate that they do that and how they do it. Because sometimes things can get lost in translation, and just ticking a box these days isn't good enough. You need to be able to see them and how they actually, what that capability looks like for them. So yeah, I think that's important.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the business impact of this. So how can organizations effectively manage their client and partner training programs to really maximize that impact? Fiona?
Business impact. This is a topic. It's one of the favorite topics for analysts over recent years, both for internal and for the external side of things. It is so important to be able to measure the impact of the learning. And when we talk to the L&D departments, sometimes they struggle with this, because they could be training compliance or training leadership, and to be able to come back with a return on investment for that, it's very difficult. But I think, and I think Stephan will kind of talk about really the kind of the efficiencies of doing things, which is so important, and making sure that, particularly as you've got enough people in a room to make it profitable. But I think there are beyond that, there are other things that we can be measuring. And particularly with the extended enterprise, because you're at the business end, then you should have access to the data. And so it's all about, where is the data and what data is it that you're wanting to measure, and measure it now, even before you've got a system or you've got things in place. Measure it now so that you can show what's changed, what's different, what's improved because of the learning that you've been delivering. So yeah, we might come back to what those specific things are, but some of those data points. But that would be my point, is that absolutely measure the data. And although, as we've been seeing, I'm saying it should be easier at that business end to be able to measure the impact, it's not happening as often as it should be. And people, certainly from the surveys that we do, we get responses that saying, yeah, we're about to start to do this. It's something that's on the roadmap for them as an organization, to start to kind of look at the impact. But it's so important, particularly to ensure your own success, and that your own C-suite understand how good you are at what you're doing, and therefore don't cut your budgets, which is something that can be happening in an economic situation like we're in at the moment. So Stephan, what's your take on that same question?
Yeah. I think obviously the business impact is really strategic. First of all, I think that the extended enterprise usually they are closer from the business. They are doing product education, so meaning they are close from business. I would say that the L&D, obviously, those doing employee education, they serve the entire organization, but not necessarily only on the business side. So I would say that, they are really business oriented. So we're seeing silos, as Fiona, you said, but on the extended enterprise side, also what we see is that they are doing more instructor-led training or virtual instructor-led training. Of course, it's a very effective way to train. It's more expensive, and it's very effective. It's maybe also easier to sell to a client as a product, and they really need a clear, measurable impact. And in the client relation, it's important when you are doing an instructor-led training or virtual instructor-led training. Client can ask question, you better interact. So it has probably to be with. It would be difficult for me to explain why, and what are all the reasons. But we see more instructor-led training and virtual instructor-led training in the extended enterprise than in the L&D. Second, to impact the business, choosing the best instructor makes a big difference, obviously, and also being able to measure how profitable is each scheduled event or each scheduled session. If you have a for-profit business model, is also very important. As well as having a detailed pricing strategy. That is very important. So one thing that we see that is extremely popular in Europe, even if invented in the US, because GE Crotonville has invented the concept of academy or university. So invented in the US, but extremely popular in Europe, more than in North America. We're seeing those academies in Europe serving not only external audience, but also internal employees, and charging back even the internal employees. What is good is that they could mix the population in one session. So it's not creating silos. So because sometimes, skilled people are skilled people wherever they come from. So they can mix, so they can, optimize the number of seats, a number of participants, or reduce the cost per participant. Also, they can consolidate and share some resources. So the more you have experts, the more you need those experts to be properly managed, centralized, optimize the way you use them. And when you have an expert, I don't know, in a nuclear power plant, be it's to train, an energy company to whom you sold a nuclear power plant, or it's to train your own employees. It's all about the same subject. It's all about our security. It's all about managing properly such an installation. Also, you see that you have a lot of duplication, of the catalog, where the content are nearly the same, but you will have two courses, while the goal is exactly the same. So making the most also of your resources, reducing the cost, better using your resources is something that has been very popular for those who have mixed extended enterprise, so academy, university, where they serve both internal employees and external audience.
I think from my perspective, just picking up on a couple of things that you've mentioned, you're talking about, the trainers need to be, real experts, and I think what we've seen is that where organizations have had to move from in-person training to online training, then there has needed to be that extra training for the trainers, for the facilitators. So because it's a different skill set, and I think as long as they've got the right equipment and the training to be those online facilitators, then they can be really successful in that. But I think the other thing that you've been talking about as well is the fact that there is such the training, I think the face-to-face training with the trainers, when it's a really complex product, if you like. I mean, it could be a medical product, or as you say, on a car, or an aeroplane, or whatever. It can be, and it's good to have those trainers kind of involved, and so that the experts can question things and whatever. But I think there is that extended enterprise piece as well, where it isn't, it's online, and it's a product that's quite simple, and maybe a video will do it. So as I say, a hair salon, a hair product, then you don't need a trainer for that. So there is this massive spectrum of possibilities of the way that businesses can do extended enterprise. And I think as long as you know what it is that you're looking for, and your specific way of doing things, then there is a product out there there is a technology product, there's a learning technology product out there that can help you. So yeah, I think just to add a little bit of to the spectrum, if you like, from what you were talking about, Stephan.
Yes, and if I may on that, Fiona, Training Orchestra is a software company, so we train not only our employees but also our clients. And when we train our clients, we're using all the methodology. We're using e-learning, we're using instructor-led training, virtual instructor-led training. We're building a learning journey. And there is not one methodology, that is better or worse. All have their advantage, and that's what is also really important. And we bought also an LMS for our own need, because we need to train our clients and our employees. So meaning even Training Orchestra. So yes, product education, employee education, partner education, client education. There is not one methodology that is better than the other. So I'm fully aligned with what you said.
All right. Thank you both. So just kind of keeping along the lines of the business and impact, we come to ROI. And I know we talked a little bit about that, but Stephan, in order to create ROI, what are some of the main KPIs that one would need to track?
Yes, so obviously, as Fiona said, the first, is, do we serve properly the business impact? What's the business impact of that Boeing and Airbus are looking for? So it's not just about making profit. It's being sure that everyone is properly trained. So it's all about the security. It's all about using their product. So first of all, I would say, do we serve the business impact? Because the extended enterprise is on a mission to serve a business purpose. For example, if you take, a software company, how fast can they onboard their partner? How fast can that will deploy their system? How fast can they onboard the client? So the client will be autonomous. So there is obviously a business impact. It's true for us as a vendor when we train our clients or partners or distributors or employees, but it's true, I think, for any extended enterprise. I would say instructor utilization rate is something very important. How well do you use your rare and strategic resource like the instructor? Profitability of the session would be a second one. The third one would be the number of participants per session. How do you optimize that? Because you reduce the cost for each learner, and you can also automate most of the tasks, with AI or with just automation, but also task automation is also so you can reduce the admin workload is also something that is important to measure.
Great. Okay, Fiona, did you have?
Yeah, I was just going to say from an analyst perspective. So we also tend to talk about the business data. So trying to establish or making sure with the training that there are people coming onto that training. Again, going from something that was in person to being online, even with a trainer, then we have seen from a number of companies that they've said that the adoption rate of that training has increased quite significantly. And so again, measuring that and showing that's possible is an important metric. I think also that customer satisfaction scores as well. It's a good measurement from that. But the other side of it is looking at, are you maintaining your customers? Are your customers renewing their contracts with you? That's, because if you're keeping them happy, if they are adopting the product itself and using it and are happy using it, then again, that's a good metric to be measuring and to be monitoring as well, to make sure that that's always on the up rather than on the perhaps declining at any point. And also it could be that you could be measuring support calls. So if you're getting that training right and you're doing well at the front end, you should have fewer support calls, and that could be coming into your own IT department or into your customer's IT department. So yeah, there are a number of things there that I think are important to measure as well, and it's showing business impact and showing the efficiencies. But those aren't necessarily that easy to do. And again, it's something that not everybody is actually doing at the moment. They've got a thought about doing it. And sometimes it's a matter of bringing two sets of data together, which can be difficult because they could be owned by two separate departments. And so bringing those things together aren't always that easy. Very easy for us as analysts saying, you should be doing this. Yeah, but it's not quite that simple when you're on the ground in the organization. But yeah, it's a good aspiration to have and a good way, to be working towards that anyway.
All right, thank you, Fiona. So let's get on to talking about the future of extended enterprise learning. And so first, Stephan, can you share some insights into how Training Orchestra supports organizations in implementing and managing extended enterprise training?
Yes, it's a great question. So the way we support the extended enterprise business model will be linked to the use case of the client. And obviously, I think that the best is to maybe mention the most frequent use cases that we're seeing. So I don't want to give a caricature, but I would like to just mention really frequent use cases. So we'll see a lot of software company or product company where they put their product at core and they need to better train their partners, deploying their system, or third party managing their system, and also to manage their client to ease the product adoption. So that's a very frequent use case. Usually it's for profit. It's linked to a B2B product. So you may have private classes and public classes, and it's all about product adoption. So it's all about making the most of the strategic resource, to train, a lot your partner and client. So a lot in any software company and any company where product can endanger the life. Second use case that we're seeing are the training company. So it's a business, it's an entrepreneur, pure for-profit education. So they usually they have 50% of their business, which is private classes, and 50% which is public classes. So they have to manage unknown learner. It's different for the first use case when you do product education, because sometimes you need to certify it on your product. So, but when you for profit and you train on how to use Excel spreadsheet or how to use Google spreadsheet, what is important for you is your business, serving well your client. So they have a lot of unknown learner and they have to follow the profit at the session level. It's a second use case we're seeing. In the association, it's different. We see some association, they are in a business, a B2C business model. I should not say business to consumer, I should say business to learner, but they may train family, they may train members, so they are not for profit. Sometimes it's free, and they know most of the time their members, their learners, and it's always 100% of public classes, except if they are B2B association, but it's rare, B2B. It's rare. And we're seeing a model very popular in Europe, not as popular in North America, where, they have broken the silos, and it's one academy service employees. So and those not on the payroll, as Fiona said. So external clients, partners, all of them on the same system. It's a very frequent use case also that we're seeing. That's how we serve them. Different configuration, different packages, different feature depending of. Are you for profit, not for profit? Do you manage just private classes or also public classes? Known, unknown learner? Do you need to invoice? Do you have a website? How do you take an orders? All those questions, will help us, providing a system that is always the same as any SaaS company, but that we will configure a different ways.
Okay, thank you, Stephan. And Fiona, from your experience, your expertise, what trends do you foresee in shaping the future of extended enterprise learning, and how can organizations stay ahead?
So I think, as we said right back at the beginning, that it's extended enterprise as a market trend. It is accelerating, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I think it is because this educating your customer is going to be a differentiator in that product sales cycle. It is going to be something that getting better at that, making sure that the learner experience in doing that is a good one. So there's going to be improvements in that area. I think obviously customer satisfaction is key, and you've got to keep the customers happy, and so that you can be successful when they are successful. I think as well, as companies are adopting this maybe for the first time, or sort of it's the early stages, both in a technology perspective, I think both the technology companies, the vendors, are going to be maturing, and also the clients will be maturing with them, so that they can start to do more things that perhaps some other organizations, maybe the bigger organizations that you see, I think, they will start to kind of replicate some of those things that are going on, particularly as we were talking about earlier about the profit center, becoming a profit center rather than it just being a benefit, a sales benefit for that particular company, which is a good way of doing things. And there are some organizations that will never sell their training, but they still need to do that training. But I think that learning experience that is actually a popular phrase, if you like, and in L&D, I think is as important, if not more important, in the customer training side. And so things need to improve. The technology needs to make sure that it's consumer grade. There's a lot of expectation, more and more coming through from the younger end of the population, and they're an expectation of it to be good, and therefore the buyers are going to be expecting it to be a great user, a great learner experience. And I think AI is going to come in there. It's coming into absolutely everything, and skills is in there as well. All these things we're developing in the learning industry and the learning technology industry, and so that's not going to be missed, if you like, from the extended enterprise side of things. And I think a little bit of, as I said before, coming together. If you are a separate organization from, internal, external, share the best practice. You might decide to go to separate systems, fine, but sometimes that content is the same anyway. You just need to maybe rebrand it or whatever. But I think collaboration within an organization is key and good at any time with anything. So yeah.
So thank you, Fiona. That's really great. And you know what? I think that's a wrap. So wonderful insights today. Thank you, Stephan, and thank you, Fiona, for generously sharing your expertise and perspective on extended enterprise learning with us today. And we're always so happy to talk with you. So have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for asking me.
Thank you.